Ah, thank you. Whoever did that, thank you.
Just waiting on Ron. I sent him the link.
I'm here, but it won't allow me to start my video. It says the host has disabled it.
Oh, good. It's not just me.
It's the
So
same.
that is the second
Ron
of
Bender.
June. I don't know. I see no controls.
There it is. Nope. I'm showing up, but I'm not able to turn the video on.
Okay. All right. We have to start our webinar.
All right, we're going to wing it with audio for those who don't have their camera. The cameras aren't working for some reason.
Right.
All right.
So welcome everyone to our webinar, our weekly webinar. This week we're presenting business ownership strategies through franchising. And we have a team of people here to talk to you today and to share their knowledge with you. So thank you very much for coming. Before I allow them to speak though, this is my show, so I get to go first. I'm Diane McKeever. I am a mentor at Minnesota chapter of SCORE. And before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about SCORE. SCORE is a nonprofit agency, nonprofit organization, I should say, and we're a resource partner of the Small Business Administration. They kind of started us and support us. We offer free confidential business mentoring 24/7. Well, not really 24/7, but there are workshops online that you can look at 24/7. Our chapter, which as I said was the Minnesota chapter, serves Manatee and Sarasota counties in Florida, in sunny Florida. I don't know where you are, but we're nice and warm here today. We have nearly 90 members in our chapter who are waiting to help you with your business decisions. And recently our chapter was named a chapter of the year. So where in your business development can we help you? Well, anywhere we can help you. You woke up this morning, you had that dream last night that you now want to pursue and open up that business, but you don't know how. Well, we can help you. We can be your sounding board and we can help direct you. Or you've opened it and you need some advice on that. Hey, we've got advice about everything. You want to grow your business, you want to sell or close your business, we can help you do that too. We actually have a team that can help you sell or close, and conversely, we can help you buy a business so that you don't pay too much for it. So contact us. Where can you contact us? Well, you go to score.org/Minnesota. And you click on request a mentor. It's that hard. You fill in a little form that says your name, your contact information, and the kind of help that you're looking for. And within a couple of days, somebody will be contacting you to help you through whatever process it is. We work with clients maybe sometimes 3 or 4 times, sometimes 3 or 4 years. So it doesn't, we have no limits on that. You can also look at our workshop calendar by going to our website and searching for webinars that are recorded. Lastly, I want to thank our community partners. Without our sponsors and community partners, there would be no lights on here. Well, of course, it's sunny in Florida. I did say that, so it'd be okay if we had no lights. But these are the folks that really help and support us, and we like to support them. You'll notice that a lot of our sponsors are banks. And I have to tell you, if you come into one of these banks, and probably Tara will tell you, if you come into one of these banks with a SCORE mentor, they listen to you a lot more than if you came in all by yourself with a whole pile of papers and receipts and saying, yeah, I really deserve some money. Could you give me some? So think about getting a mentor if you're thinking about getting a loan. We don't give money. We help you get money, though. So what does that bring us to? It brings us to Jim. Jim McElhaney is the ringleader for this team. And take it away, Jim.
Thanks, Diane, and good afternoon, everybody. And I want to thank my panel that's joined me here. These are all professionals that I've come to know through the franchising industry, which, by the way, is a very giving industry. So I appreciate them giving their time today. We're going to keep this pretty interactive, meaning I'm going to try to lead a discussion after I tee up a few thoughts about franchising in general. But then we're going to bring our panelists in and ask a few questions about their experience and how they might be able to give you some lens into how franchising might be a possibility for you. If you do have any questions, I know Diane likes the questions to be grabbed in the Q&A, and we'll look at that at the end of the presentation and see what questions you might have for us. And then we'll try to dole them out and help you get them answered. So I want to just jump to the next slide. Let me just see if I can frame the conversation a bit in terms of business ownership options, right? So I think about it as there's kind of three ways that I see people going into business. And the people who we tend to work with at FranNet tend to be people that are in some sort of transition. So maybe they've moved out of corporate life, or maybe they've been moved out of corporate life, or perhaps there's someone who's looking for an additional income stream in addition to keeping their day job. Well, franchising does have options for all of those, but I also like to sort of compare it to the different ways of going into business. So if you start a business from scratch, you know, you're that person that wakes up with that bright idea. The pros to that is that you have total control, right? It's your passion, you're getting that business started. But what also is a headwind to that perhaps is that concept proven? Right? You're going to go through a lot of trial and error, which is going to encounter probably a good amount of cost as you try to experiment and figure out what the systems of business operation are that you need. So, you know, your growth is maybe stunted by that or held back by that. But, you know, it's still a pathway for people into business, right? And it's the one that gives them the most control. You can also buy an existing business. So maybe that's a mom and pop in your community where someone's retiring and they're ready to pass their business on to the next owner. Those are great because you've got customers, you've got employees, you've got cash flow usually. But the questions that I oftentimes ask people or challenge people to think about with that option is, what do they really know about the business, right? What's the true motivation for the seller wanting to sell the business? Will the employees stick with the business if you were the new buyer? Will the clients or the customers stick with the business, right? And I think the biggest one, and it's really the biggest distinction to franchising, is those systems that are in the business. Can they survive in the absence of that original owner, right? Or is the owner so central to that business that it really isn't going to operate as well with you stepping in and trying to move down the curve and learn? So the third one, the one that I've gravitated toward, is buying a franchise, right? And the positives to that are proven track record. You know, usually there's brand recognition. There's credibility to that business from day one. And most importantly, there are systems of operation, whether that's systems around training, starting up the business, operating the business, marketing the business. So you get to sort of step onto a moving train as a new local owner, right? So that franchisee that's coming into the business really does get a way to accelerate their growth and to rely on the network they have within the franchise itself. Interesting statistic here, and this is from the SBA. If we go back to that start a business from scratch, in 5 years' time, 1 out of every 2 of those businesses oftentimes is out of business. Whereas when you look at a franchise, after 5 years, 92% of those franchises, according to the SBA, are still operating. So next slide, please. So what is a franchise, right? It essentially is a license to use the name, the trademarks, the products or services, and the business systems that have been created by the franchisor. Ron's going to talk and share the franchisor perspective very shortly. And then what's that in exchange for? It's in exchange for a payment of an initial franchise fee, a licensing fee, if you will, up front, and then ongoing royalties, which typically are going to be a percentage of the revenues of your local business as the franchisee. Rod will talk more about being a franchisee. Next slide, please. So I like to cover this slide because everyone thinks that franchising is French fries and donuts and food. And we're going to hear someone who's in the food business very shortly. But I just wanted to throw this slide up there so you could see the different dimensions to franchising and the different segments. So the food business definitely sits in that retail products and services. But look at all the different areas. I bet you're surprised to hear that there's over 3,600 different franchise companies in the US. And it actually covers more than 90 industries. And some of these industries, you know, I have people that come to me at FranNet because what we do is we help match to franchise concepts that will help someone achieve their goals. And they say, Jim, I'd like to talk about a business that's going to play into maybe its demographics, right? And the shift in population. Well, senior care businesses are a great example in franchising of a business that plays into demographics. Sometimes people come to me and they say, I really would like something that's more recession resistant. Well, then I talk to them about things like the automotive business or even some of the home services space that Ron will talk about in a few minutes. And then lastly, I also have people that come to me and say, I want to work with other businesses because as long as they're in business, I know they're going to need the kind of things that my business might be able to provide. So think about sign businesses, think about coaching businesses, think about staffing businesses there. So hopefully the takeaway from this is you can see that it is in fact more than French fries. And there's a whole set of industries out there in franchising that could be your choice and your option. So what I'm going to do now is I want to jump over and throw it over to Ron. I'm going to ask him a few questions to give you a background and a perspective from the standpoint of the franchisor, the entity that has created the concepts that are available for distribution through the franchisees. So Ron, welcome. Interesting to talk about veterans in franchising today, which is one of our emphasis because 7% of the US population is a franchisee, whereas 7% of the US population are veterans, but 14% of the franchisee population are veterans. So we can see there's a high connection between veterans and franchising. But first, let's talk about, tell us a little bit about Threshold Brands, what you all do.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you very much for having me. I'm a big fan of SCORE. And since I do live in Minnesota, I live in Bradenton, I'm a local fan of SCORE as well. So as far as veterans in franchising and Threshold Brands, so Threshold Brands is a platform company of 9 different home services brands. And we cover everything from residential cleaning to beautifying the home with tile and stone and grout to re-insulating older homes and keeping people comfortable and decreasing their utility costs. We have a very wide variety of essential services, including plumbing and HVAC and things like that. Home services right now are booming at Threshold Brands and elsewhere because as so many people spent more time at home through the COVID problem, they realized that they could make their home much more comfortable and they invested in that home and they're still doing it. Home services is normalizing a little bit, which is a benefit because it now means that consumers can get the services done much faster. You know, the last couple of years, we haven't been able to get to every consumer and get their work done as quickly as we wanted to. But Threshold Brands has addressed not only those essential services, but the beautification services. And one of the things that we and many other great franchisors are doing is we are providing resources to help our new franchisees recruit and retain great staff, because obviously that is a terrific concern as well.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, you're out there, part of your role is to draw in and attract new franchisees to the Threshold Brands. So let's talk about why veterans are interesting to Threshold.
Well, we, just like every franchisor, have learned that the things that people learn when they serve in the U.S. military are incredibly assignable to working in a franchise. So, for example, people in our military they learn systems, they follow systems, they improve systems, they build teams, they are mission focused. All of these things are absolutely fantastic for franchises, as well as obviously in the military. And one of the things to really pay attention to is a lot of people say military veterans are great in franchises because they follow the system. They're given a system, they do it, they don't think, they don't talk, they don't ask, they just do it. And that is not correct. They are used to working with limited resources. They are used to learning about the mission, determining how to best attain that mission or complete that mission, and then continue to improve the systems and processes and share it amongst the other teams, the other operating units in the military, the other franchisees in our systems.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, very often at the local level as a franchisee, there isn't always going to be a bat phone to be calling your franchisor for every little thing that you have happening and going on, right? So that training from the military of thinking on your feet in the moment is something that I know franchisees talk very much about as being their reality in what they do, So talk to me about industry experience, right? So if you talked about home services brands, but what if I'm someone who doesn't have a background in any of the areas that your businesses serve their consumers? What should I be thinking about there? Am I a match?
You absolutely are. As you can see behind me, we have guardrails, and every good franchise has a system which is guardrails to keep the franchisee on the road to success. And we train from ground zero. It is the very rare franchise that does require industry experience. All of our programs, you can train from ground zero, and the systems and processes will keep you on that road to success.
Okay. So some of those things that you talked about, whether it's from the military or someone coming out of corporate, ability to lead people, ability to market and have conversations, ability to have financial acumen, to work with numbers. Those are all things that if someone has those, you can teach them the rest. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, absolutely. And in many respects, we can teach one or more of those to every person that comes in. A lot of people who have worked in corporate or come out of the military, they really don't have a good handle on the financial side. So we have coaching and training on the financial side. Now, we cannot train personality. So team building is a really, really important skill set to bring in. But as long as you like people and you can communicate well, man, we can make those people successful with all the training and support.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to want to bring in Rod now. Rod's a franchisee with a brand called Smokin' Oak Wood-Fired Pizza and Tap Room. He's up in Brooksville, Florida. So if anyone on this call is heading north of Tampa, Rod would be happy to see you, right? So Rod, let's first talk about, thank you for joining, but let's first talk about, you tell us a little bit about your background in the military, since we're stressing sort of the veteran entry into franchising today.
Well, good morning, Jim, and everyone on the call. Thanks for having me. So I joined the military in 1985 and retired in 2017. I did 32 years as originally a combat flight medic, and then progressed into the intelligence field. I was a counterintelligence and counter-narcotics officer for several years until 2001, and became a counterterrorism specialist. I got my master's degree through the Army in Homeland Security and narcoterrorism. So I've progressed in my field to the highest level I can. I started as a buck private and retired as a lieutenant colonel. So I did everything it could possibly do. I lived in 17 countries, 14 states, and had an amazing, speak 7 languages now, and had an amazing career. And then I didn't know what to do when I retired.
So what options did you consider when it was time to transition out? What were the things you were thinking about?
So I retired in Hawaii, and I thought, well, I could live on the beach and surf and fish and live happily ever after. But my wife is from Georgia, and our kids live here in Florida. And we thought, it's a 2-day trip to say hello to our kids. So instead of living in Hawaii broke, we moved to what I call poor man's Hawaii. Kat calls it mainland Hawaii, here to Florida. And I loved cooking, so I went to culinary school at the age of 56, I think. And I was by far the oldest kid in class, but had a great time. And the government paid for it, and they paid me to live to go to school. So I couldn't pass that up. So I went to culinary school.
Okay. So tell us, so you get through culinary school and now you got to do something with it. So how did you find your way into franchising? And maybe tell us a little bit more about the business that you operate in Brooksville. Oops, you're on mute, Rod.
Sorry about that. After I graduated culinary school, my wife and I decided to travel. I bought a 35-foot RV, and we drove 48 states for 18 months, just lost. And I visited every pizza restaurant, every winery, brewery, etc. around the country. And because of my military career, I don't sleep well. So about 2:30 in the morning, just surfing the internet, I saw a guy putting a pizza in a hot oven with flames sticking out, and I thought, God, that's what I want to do. So I looked up what the company was, and it was called Smokin' Oak Wood Fired Pizza. And I love pizza. And I thought, what a great idea. And it said it was in St. Pete, Florida. So I woke my wife up about 5:30 in the morning and said, honey, we're going to St. Pete for breakfast, for lunch. And we drove down there and found out that the CEO lives there, but the company was based out of Minnesota. So I had breakfast with him and we booked a flight to Minnesota. I tasted their pizzas, fell in love with it, and said, so what do I do? You know, I'm as a military, I drive fast forward, and I wrote him a check and bought the franchise. And it was an amazing experience and still is.
Well, congratulations on that. I've been to your location and I've had a great experience there myself. So tell me, this idea of business ownership for yourself, I mean, I'm sure it has its highs and its lows, right? But for you, what's motivating you to go into business that way as opposed to maybe becoming a W-2 for someone else's company?
Sure. So first of all, I want to share something that I found immediately. I live in a small town and people here always post on Facebook, I want to go to a mom and pop store, no franchises, no. And so I wrote them a note and I got over 1,000 likes and comments that franchises are mom and pop stores. I am a mom and pop. I'm the pop of this store. Yes, we are franchise, but we're not a big corporate entity that has millions of dollars like a McDonald's franchise, for example. So I just want to throw that out there that franchises are mom and pops. And I saw the pizza place and I thought a franchise business is great. I could spend a couple of years thinking about how to design a menu, how to design a restaurant, how many chairs, how many tables, what's the design factor, what's the demographics in the area. We learned all that in school, but I didn't want to wait 2 or 3 years to figure all that out, do some test markets of food. And everybody loves pizza. And the pizza is great because it's a wood-fired pizza and there's not a lot around. And I just thought it was an incredible opportunity. And it was sort of a turnkey operation for me to get started right away. They told me, here's the oven I need, here's the utensils I need, here's the type of location I need. And I found it and we built it. And 10 months later, we're open and we're just about hitting $1 million in our first 10 months of business.
Yeah.
So I'm excited and this is great.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, what I hear there is a lot of the systems that I talked about at the top of the call really are things that you were able to put into place to get into business and to grow to where you are in just a few short 10 months, right? Probably feels longer to you though, I know. So I love the point that you brought up about, the ability to still be local. I had the same experience. I used to be a franchisee in a hair care business. And, we had a national brand over our door, but everything that we did in our local market, just as you're describing, really helped us to connect and support the community. And that's the way that we had our growth as well. So I really like that. So tell me, thinking back now, what is it about your military career that you think prepared you, or things that you've encountered in this, journey that you've had as a franchisee that you've had to pull on your military experience?
Great question. So to start, when I was in culinary school, about 25% or so were military and going on to the GI Bill. And we were all disciplined, dedicated, showed up on time in the right uniform with the right equipment and ready to work. The other 75% of the class didn't quite have that military dedication and service. And I think it showed, you could definitely tell a soldier from a civilian. Not that civilians are bad, but we know when class starts at 9 o'clock, if we're not there by 10 minutes to 9, we're late. And every military guy there, person, showed up 10 minutes prior. We didn't miss class. We didn't show up late. We didn't show up wrinkly. I think the military discipline shined through from all of our students that were there in school, as it does here in business. I started old and their kids were between 18 and 23, and they just didn't have that motivation and drive that military does. And I think it was the best thing I ever did. And opening this up, I've gone through 65 employees in 10 months, because it's either their first job, a change in the way people feel about work. I'm not sure why, but the people here that are veterans by far outshine the people that are just starting jobs and working to get money.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, it helped a lot. And as a franchise, you know, I knew what it took to become a franchise owner, and I knew the military discipline would give me that drive to drive on and do it all in the right form, the right method, the right, you know, in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about finances in this call, but I used my military, called a TSP, my thrift savings plan. They have, it's called a rollover for business startup, because I didn't have the money to buy a franchise, but I had a few $100,000 in my TSP from 32 years of saving. And I rolled that over to pay for this, and I didn't get charged tax. I didn't get charged a penalty. I didn't get charged an early withdrawal. So it's a great opportunity to purchase a franchise using a rollover for business startup.
Yeah, I'm sure Tara is smiling wide right now because I know she's going to touch on that in a minute as well, you know.
Oh, good.
But in fact, that's probably a good place to bring her in. And as we do, Diane, if we could just go to the last slide I had. Yeah, I just want to, you know, one of the questions that often comes up is what does it cost to get into franchising? And I think people are surprised by this as well. You know, if you look at this, what this graph shows you is the initial, what we call the initial investment range, right? So that is not only the franchise fee, but also any of the other additional expenses that you as a new franchisee would have to incur in order to throw your doors open, cut your ribbon, declare yourself in business. And I think what surprises people when I show them this slide is 25 or 20%, excuse me, of the possibilities here are $100,000 or less, right? And if we broaden it out to 250 and under, it's actually about half of the universe of franchises. So a lot more affordable in franchising than what most people think. And it doesn't all have to be your own money, as Rod just pointed out. So that's a great way to pull Tara in. Tara is a funding specialist with one of the partners that I've seen do phenomenal work in the franchising space. Her firm is called Fran Fund. So Tara, help us, you know, we're talking about getting into business. So what does a franchisee, a new franchisee, need to be thinking about in terms of maybe the different segments of investment to get themselves into business?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Jim, and Rod. Thank you for mentioning the ROBS program. We facilitate that and offer a discount to our veteran clients. So that was a perfect segue. But really, I mean, I think, like you said, Jim, when you're looking at a total initial investment, and it could change depending on if you're looking at something that's a service-based business, as we've talked about, and as you know, Ron has some brands that represent versus brick and mortar, because you might be looking at servicing multiple territories. You know, you might be looking at something that you can actually, a lot of these service-based businesses, you can operate from your home or a small office space versus something like Tapping Up, where you're going to have a large build out and construction. So a lot of that's going to depend on how many territories, that total initial investment, but building that together. And that's where the FDD, or the franchise disclosure document from the franchisors that you might be talking to, will become important. In that item 7, it's really going to break down all of those costs. And, you know, that's where we can we work with clients to find the right funding path for them to move forward. So you don't necessarily have to have a money tree in your backyard, but it's good to know ahead of time how you're going to fund that business startup, you know, whether it's an SBA loan, the ROBS strategy, a home equity line of credit, a portfolio loan, equipment leasing. You know, there's lots of other different options out there.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the role Fran Fund plays with prospective franchisees.
Sure. So Fran Fund was put together by a veteran in the franchise industry, and we are based out of Fort Worth, Texas. I'm calling you today remotely from my home in Indiana, so not nearly as warm as all of the rest of you, and I am a little bit jealous. I'll be really honest there. But my role specifically, I think of myself as a funding strategist, and I work with aspiring entrepreneurs because most are really unsure of where to start. They're unfamiliar with options, they're overwhelmed with info, so we help them to identify and execute strong funding solutions and try to do it all, in one house underneath one roof to be able to offer multiple options.
So what are common ways that you're seeing funding executed in the franchise space these days?
Sure. So, our book of business, to be very transparent with you, for Fran Fund is really 50-50 about an SBA loan and the Rob strategy. And again, it looks different for everybody, and some people even use both. So if you're looking at a higher project cost, maybe it's a $500,000 total project cost on the higher end of that spectrum, or maybe it's even just 250, as you had mentioned, Jim. If you want an SBA loan, the bank is going to want to see that you can put a minimum of about 20% of that total initial investment into that business using your own cash. So that can come from, obviously, if you have cash sitting in the bank, some non-retirement stocks, or maybe you are transitioning out of the military and you have that thrift savings plan, that TSP that Rod mentioned. We can use that as your cash injection for an SBA loan. Some of the stats that you mentioned are really interesting, as you said, with the SBA stats, and they are true. The other interesting thing is that while only about 50% of average business owners are still in business, for people who self-fund with the Rob strategy, after 5 years, over 80% of them are still in business. So a lot of people do find that very attractive option, because without the overhead of a monthly loan payment and not paying any interest, the business is able to cash flow faster.
Yeah, that's a really important point, right? I mean, with a Robs, or even I've seen this with people who think about home equity lines of credit, they're more in control of how they pay down or pay back, as opposed to an SBA that's going to have something that feels like a monthly principal interest payment. Yeah.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. So, pretty much anyone who's thinking about going into franchising and getting a business going for themselves, they probably already have one or more relationships already set up with banks, maybe in their community. So what are the pros and the cons of maybe walking down to your own bank versus working with a firm like Fran Fund? What do you see as being the advantages?
Yeah. Jim, can you still hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay, my screen did something weird. So it's really on the SBA lending side of things. A lot of our clients will say, hey, I'm just going to go down to my local bank and get a small business loan. And if you can, that's great. And I'm not saying that you can't. The national average for somebody walking into their bank and obtaining an SBA loan is it's in the 30s. It's about 34%. Fran Fund has a 99% success rate in terms of obtaining loans for people that we've provided a pre-approval letter to. That doesn't mean that we're able to get loans for 99% of our clients, but what we do, we're not a bank or a direct lending institution, but similar to what SCORE can kind of do, like she said, you can help we're not going to give you money, but we can help get you money, is we work with a large network of lenders across the.
Oops. Tara dropped on us.
Oops.
Yeah. Well, what I think she was going to say was that, because I'm familiar, I've referred a lot of clients out to Fran Fund, but what one of the advantages I see for franchising is they know the lending institutions that might be looking for the exposure to the industry that you're thinking about going into as a franchisee, right? So when I was going into hair care, they helped me to match up against institutions that were open to and wanted to take on that exposure. They also know when an institution has sort of capped out their exposure, and they can help you pivot to a different institution that may be looking for that match. So that whole sort of matching of liability and asset to create that loan is something that I've seen Fran Fund and their competitors in the franchise space be a great advantage for. The other thing is they also understand the franchise concepts, right? Sometimes your own bank maybe either doesn't understand franchising as well, or they don't really have the specialization inside the organization that can help with that. So while I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my panel to all take themselves off mute, because I'm going to throw some fast questions at everybody. And Tara, welcome back. I tried to fill in the blanks of where I thought you were going with that question. And I'm just going to go to a few round robin questions and coming back to you, certainly seeing if there's anything else you want to add into it as well. So I'm going to go to Ron first. So you're trying to attract veterans into the franchise concepts of Threshold Brands. What are some of the benefits or opportunities that are unique to veterans in Threshold Brands?
Well, thanks, Jim. Well, first of all, we again really value veterans as potential franchise owners. So we offer a discount on their initial franchise fee. And depending on the brand, it's up to 20% off that initial franchise fee, which could be a savings of $5,000, $10,000, or even $12,000. And then we offer additional mentoring to all new veteran franchise owners, where they are matched with an existing franchise owner who's a veteran. And they have a lot of opportunity to learn from the ground up from someone that comes from a relatively similar background. Now, there are no guarantees that that person will come from the same branch of service. So I know the competition there sometimes gets pretty rough, but.
Okay, interesting. So Tara, how about the same question to you on Fran Fund and opportunities for, savings or different benefits for veterans?
Yes, and sorry, I was talking for a really long time. My screen was spinning and I thought you guys could still hear me. So I'm not sure how much of me you heard, but anyway.
You can go back to the replay later on, because I think I tried to fill in the blanks of where you were going. So
I'm sure you did wonderful.
Yeah, you'll tell me later, I'm sure.
All right. No, well, we also really respect the veteran community. So one thing that Fran Fund does is we are a big supporter and part of that FRAN, which is an IFA initiative, an International Franchise Association initiative to get more veterans into small business ownership. We've actually even sponsored the Armed Forces Bowl for the last few years in a row. And the biggest thing is on the ROB strategy that Rod had mentioned, that program that allows you to use eligible retirement savings and invest them into your business without any income tax or early withdrawal penalty. Typically, for our normal client, that fee is $4,795 because there's a lot that goes into that. But for veterans, we discount their rate to $3,995. So that's a pretty big cost savings there.
Gotcha. Okay. And what about other, if someone was thinking about business, I oftentimes say to my clients, maybe you just want to understand the funding possibilities first before you get too far down the path. What are the resources Fran Fund or your competitors might offer there?
Sure. So we have a very stout website. There's a lot of information there. What I would suggest, if you're really early on in the process, we actually provide a monthly webinar, and it's done in live, so you can ask questions of the funding consultants. We do that every month, once a month, and we talk it through SBA lending and fleet and commercial leasing and the ROBS program. And again, even if you register and you cannot participate live, you will get the on-demand recording. And we have a team of great funding consultants, myself and others on our team, and we're always happy to have that educational and consultative call. So even if you're not ready now, you know what it's going to take for you to get to that path for small business ownership.
Yeah, thanks. I was mentioning before when you got cut out that one of the advantages I see as opposed to going to maybe a local bank is that, funding specialists in the franchise space, they understand the franchises, they know the concept, they probably funded them before, right? So things like, helping to maybe just look over business plans and, some of the forecasts that a prospective business owner is looking to do, that also, I presume, is something that, you guys can help guide someone on that. Is that true?
Yes, no, you're right. So I now know probably where I got cut off, but really what Fran Fund does on the SBA lending side of things is we offer a loan consultation service. So we're actually going to provide templates for the business plan, financial projections, performas. And we've worked with a network of lenders across the country that we've been able to educate, as you said, on the franchise brands that we work with. We've worked with almost probably all of the brands in your inventory and what we're seeing today. So that's where we probably funded them before. We know how a bank's going to look at them. Like Diane said, we're helping to we can't give you money, but we can help get you money. And that's where that packaging of that loan, so it's got a nice red bow on it, comes in.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm going to go back to Rod for a minute now, if he comes off of mute, just to ask him, as someone that's relatively new to business ownership for yourself, I mean, what advice would you have for anyone on this webinar who's looking into franchising as their path into business ownership?
Yeah, so Jim, thank you for that question. I think that people are scared to go into a business, and a franchise sort of holds your hand because everything's laid out for you and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I was told that I had the talent, I had the drive, I had the artistic ability to create amazing foods, but to try to get that started into a restaurant, that's a expensive investment, timely investment. And when I found pizza, I love pizza, everybody loves pizza, and it was already made for me. So I walked in, but I still got to put my own spin on a few things here. I just created my own pizza here that's local to my restaurant. So it's not just a big franchise. We're a small franchise, so we get to kind of create and choose and add our own touches to that. So I think a franchise is a great opportunity for somebody that wants to start something, but they're not sure what to do. And it gives you step-by-step guides to everything to own your own business. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that's one of the distinctions I see between established franchises versus emerging franchises, right? The established franchises, not to pick on McDonald's, but it's the one everyone thinks of.
Right.
They probably don't want to hear from me if I think I can make a better hamburger than what they do, right?
Exactly.
But at the same time, you just pointed out, you had some thoughts. Your franchisor heard you out and took you on in terms of the additional pizza or maybe some feedback on existing menu items. That's the conversation you can have in an emerging franchise like the one that you've chosen. So well done on
Right.
you.
I think too, if I can just add one thing, it's funny because in franchising, you hear this a lot and it sounds very cliche, but it is so, so true that in franchising, you're going into business for yourself, but not by yourself. And that's, I mean, exactly what everybody else has said, but that is what makes franchising so great.
Yeah, I mean, Rod could probably comment on that in terms of, just the network of fellow franchisees in the brand that he's in, whether it's the franchisor formally pulling them back together. I'm sure you do that, Ron. I'm sure there's opportunities for franchisees to come together and swap notes in your systems. Yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we just got finished with our all brand conference, which was in lovely Las Vegas right after the International Franchise Association convention. So we had about 430, 440 people all get together. They share a common interest in using franchise ownership to achieve their dreams, but they did different brands and they learned about each other. And very, very, as you say, the franchise industry is very cooperative, even if you're
Coming up season, I need some blueberry stuff.
sorry about that.
Rod, I think Rod's multitasking for the lunch run here too.
I want to try the pizza with blueberries on it. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I know.
We have a big blueberry festival coming up the end of April, and I'm doing a blueberry prosciutto and goat cheese pizza.
Oh my gosh, I'm coming up. I'm definitely.
That sounds really good. So, Rod, would you add anything in terms of just the network of leaning on fellow franchisees? Is there anything there that you want to share?
So I just came back from Dallas. I helped another franchisee open their restaurant, and it was amazing because I could tell him all the downfalls that I had in our construction and our methods and sources and everything, and it helped him. And he texts me probably 6 times a day, every day, and we talk a lot. And right now we're on a sort of chat group with some of the other franchises on how best to do one particular thing in our kitchen. So we all come together and it's great. I haven't met any of them, just one, and we get together and talk all the time, aside from official channels, on how to best pursue our restaurant. So yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
method to communicate. It's great to have a sort of a fan club for each of us, and yeah,
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about it being a family, right? I mean, when I had my hair salons, I used to say that there were owners in that system that forgot more than I was ever going to learn. right? Because they'd been in it since the 80s. And any challenge or any major decision that I had that was coming up, not only could I tap my franchisor for their perspective, but I also did dial around to some of my other franchisees and just, hear what their experience was when they encountered the same decision that I was facing. So it's a great system. And it brings back Tara's point. It's, you're not alone in business. There's a strong network of support in any franchise system. So as we're wrapping up here, I guess I'm going to throw one more over to Ron, and then we'll see what we have in terms of questions. If anyone that's participating is thinking of a question now, certainly throw it in the Q&A. We want to go there and see if there's anything we can help you with. But I'm going to ask Ron to just wrap up. We've talked a lot about support systems, but there's no question that franchising loves veterans and loves folks that have come out of military careers. So anything you want to share about, to be the resources and the support within the wider family of franchising in the U.S.?
Sure. And obviously, when people are interested in learning about their opportunities in franchising, they're going to talk to Diane and SCORE. They're going to talk to Jim and FranNet. They're going to find what franchise opportunities are going to be right for them. They're going to talk to Tara and make sure that they can get the funding that they'll need. But there are some other terrific support systems out there. For instance, I'm active on the VetFran committee that was mentioned earlier. The VetFran committee is a part of the International Franchise Association, and it is dedicated to promoting franchise ownership by military veterans and promoting employment of veterans by franchisees and franchisors. So they have a tremendous amount of resources. People can go to vetfran.org and see a toolkit for veterans to learn about the different franchises. There's a ranking system for all the brands that are active in the VetFran program. Many of them offer additional mentoring, and all of them offer discounts for veterans. But also there's a lot of education about what franchising is all about, and some kind of questionnaires to determine if it will indeed be able to help you attain your goals. So vetfran.org is a tremendous opportunity, and a lot of other organizations and suppliers will help people, especially veterans, to get into the business or make their decisions and give some discounts and other benefits too.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ron. And I see one of the questions that already came up in the chat was already answered by Rod. So yeah, Rick, to check out what Rod's talking about, you have to go a little bit further north than St. Pete, but trust me, I've been there, and it's worth trying out. It's a great experience. So if we don't, yeah. So let me just see if we have any other questions. I don't see anything in here. So unless one comes up, I'll just try to wrap us up here, Diane, if that's okay. What I'd like to leave the audience with also is, this is obviously something that's a big decision to be making in terms of going into business for yourself. And that's what we at FranNet do around the franchising space. We help people to really evaluate what their possibilities could be. And so a lot of what I do is what we just did here for the last hour. It's really around education and helping people to understand their options. And then we have a process by which we really spend our time trying to understand you as the candidate. What are your values? What are your motives? What are your transferable skills? So it's not a transactional business. It's not a quick process, but I think that benefits our clients, because the more I know about you and your aspirations for business ownership, the better equipped I'm going to be to try to help connect you to the right possibilities for you. So if that's of interest to anyone, you can go to frannet.com. You can find me or anybody else in the FranNet system that happens to be in your community, and we just want to be a resource for you as well. I'd also just want to thank SCORE. Between SCORE and the Small Business Development Centers, amazing local resources for anybody that's thinking about or is experiencing small business for themselves right now. So thank you to Diane and the team that works around her and everything that they do to help you all as well. So I don't see any other further questions. So I guess I'll just wrap up by saying thank you to my panel for everything that you added today. And if there's anything that we can be doing for you, please, everyone, channel back through Diane. She knows how to find us, and we'd be able to help you in any way we can. So thank you for your interest. And I see. Come see our new food truck at the Manatee Taco Fest, May 6th. There you go. Rod's coming to a neighborhood near you.
Oh, sounds good.
Yes, it does.
We've got the date and maybe he's bringing those blueberry pizzas. I don't
It'll
know.
be taco
would be
pizza
worth-
there.
Taco
Worth a
pizza.
trip to Manatee.
There you
Mhm.
go.
Taco
Well,
pizza.
this has
Awesome.
been fabulous. I think there are no questions because you answered all the questions. There's nothing left to talk about other than contact Jim and find out what's the best franchise for you and your skills and your interests, and then work with Tara and Ron, and you could be successful like Rod. What did he say thought he was going to make this first year in business? It was an impressive number. So if you're thinking about business, I think there's a lot of my clients who I should point in the direction of going to the franchise route, because they're going through such angst all by themselves, building out and finding a place and social media and websites. All of that is done for you, right? You've got the structure behind you and you don't have to start from scratch. There's something to be said for that. You know, when you're 50 or 60, do you really want to be starting from scratch? I don't know. But if you want to work with a mentor, go to score.org/Minnesota. You can click on request a mentor and we'd be really happy to work with you. You can look at some of our recorded webinars there. We have webinars every single week on a variety of topics. There must be a recorded webinar on whatever it is that you're needing help with. You can easily search that. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. I want to let you know that you will be getting an email with a survey. We would really love it if you could take a moment and just evaluate this webinar on a scale of 1 to 10, with 9 and 10 being the highest. Just keep that in mind. We strive for that. But also, I am the education chair, and I want to know what other topics might you be interested in hearing. Franchises is one popular one, but we have them, as I say, weekly. And so I'd be interested. We have a lot coming up on financial and marketing and everything that you need to run your business. So thank you for coming. And thank you again to Jim, Ron, Rod, Tara. Yay, without you, this would have been very quiet. But it was great. It was informative. Thank you to the people who attended. I'm looking and I'm seeing that everybody is saying thank you, thank you, thank you. It was very informative, and it was. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for sharing your expertise. We look forward to talking with you again in the future.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks
Thank you
all.
for
Have a
Thank you,
good
having us.
Diane. Thanks, everyone.
Bye all.